On January 26, 2013, 21-year-old Elisa Lam checked into the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Just days later, on February 1st, she was seen on security cameras laughing and making silly faces inside the elevator. 4 days after that, on February 5th, her worried parents reported her missing. What followed would become one of the internet's most chilling mysteries. This is the bizarre case of Elisa Lam. Hi, I'm your host, and today we're going to be looking at one of the most famous unsolved missing persons cases since the beginning of the internet age. A case that has been heavily memed, theorized, and TikToked to the point where it has almost become part of our collective unconsciousness. But can we forget all of the weird nonsense that people have come up with over the years and just look at the facts of the case? What really happened to Elisa Lam? Elisa Lam was born on April 30th, 1991 in Vancouver, British Columbia. She was an extremely bright student who graduated from the University of British Columbia in 2012. She had always struggled with depression and anxiety and had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. As a teenager, she became increasingly interested in transcendental meditation, yoga, and holistic healing. She was also an avid blogger and social media user and often used these platforms to open up about her struggles with mental illness. In the months leading up to the incident, her mental state began to deteriorate. She stopped attending university, stopped talking to her friends, and cut contact with her family. She moved into a friend's house, but soon after they asked her to move out because she was becoming a disruptive presence. Desperate to escape the cold Canadian winter, she decided to take a vacation to California. Her mother, who was paying for the trip, told her to book a hotel and said she would pay for the costs. After some research, Elisa booked herself into the Cecil Hotel, a budget hotel downtown Los Angeles. According to her mother, she made the reservation under the alias Erica. Part of the reason why her mom wanted her to stay at the hotel was because she had read good reviews about it online, and part of the reason why was because it was very cheap. As it turned out, there was a reason why the hotel was so cheap. The Cecil Hotel is probably one of the most notorious buildings in Los Angeles. Built in 1927, the building was originally called the Stace Hotel, but by the 1960s, it had become known as the Cecil Hotel. This was due to the kinds of people who stayed there. It had become somewhat of a hub for serial killers, cult members, and those who just wanted to lay low. In total, 60 people are known to have died violently within the building. There had been suicides, drug overdoses, beatings, and poisonings. Not to mention that Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, had stayed in room 2815 during his crime spree. When Elisa Lam arrived at the hotel, she was assigned to room 541 on the 5th floor. Checking in alone on January, she gave the front desk clerk her credit card and driver's license, but they seem to have disappeared and nobody knows where they are today. As it turned out, the first 2 weeks of January would go by without incident. No complaints, no disturbances, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, on January 26th, things started to change. At 1:43 p.m., she was caught on CCTV using the elevator alone. But when the doors opened on the 5th floor, she was never seen again. Now, before we go any further, let's just examine the footage itself. If you look at the footage closely, it seems completely normal. Elisa enters the elevator, presses the button for the 5th floor, and looks around nervously. When the doors open, she exits the elevator and walks down the hallway. Everything normal, right? Well, yes, except she never exited the elevator. She should have gone to her room at the end of the hall, but she didn't. She actually ran back into the elevator. After a few moments, she pressed the elevator button again and beckoned for the elevator to come back up to the 5th floor. Once it did, she stepped out of the elevator and walked back down the hall. And still, she didn't go to her room. She instead leaned against the wall near the elevator and waited for something or someone. She appeared to be smiling at something on the ground and was observed adjusting her clothes. Then suddenly, she began to frantically press the elevator buttons and make wild hand movements. She continued this for another minute, appearing to talk to herself and make funny faces. Finally, she stepped back into the elevator, closed the door, and rode it back down. She got off on the 4th floor and was never seen again. For the next 10 days, Elisa was not heard from. The hotel staff would later say that they had cleaned the room and changed the sheets while she was supposedly staying in the room. The police would later discover that her passport had expired in 2012 and that she was illegally in the United States. They would also discover that she had withdrawn $400 from an ATM 2 days after checking into the hotel, but no record of her using a credit card or withdrawing any money after that. So how could she have afforded her hotel stay? And where did she go after leaving the elevator? The reason why we don't know what happened to Elisa is that the hotel had no cameras in the hallways or rooms. And besides the CCTV cameras in the elevator, the only other camera was outside the hotel lobby. This meant that there was a blind spot between the front door and the elevator. And this blind spot has yielded many theories about what may have happened to her. One popular theory is that when Elisa checked into the hotel, she was kidnapped by a member of the Mara Salvatrucha gang, otherwise known as the MS-13. This explanation seems plausible considering that the Cecil Hotel is close to the border of East Los Angeles, which is a known gang territory. However, it doesn't explain why she would have been left alive for 10 days, or why her body was dumped in the water tank. Another theory is that Elisa was killed by a serial killer. After all, the Cecil Hotel is one of the most infamous places in LA for serial killers. This is also unlikely because there had been no recent reports of serial killers operating in the area and because there were no signs of trauma on her body. Perhaps the most popular theory is that Elisa never left the 5th floor. In fact, when the police conducted their initial search of the room, they found that the bed hadn't been slept in for several days, and there was no sign of a struggle. They also found a pair of scissors and a cord similar to the type used in the hotel. Many people have suggested that Elisa took her own life, but an autopsy report found no drugs or alcohol in her system and determined the cause of death to be accidental drowning. But here's the thing, it's nearly impossible to accidentally drown in a water tank on the roof of a building, especially one that is locked and alarmed. To reach the roof, Elisa would have had to use the elevator, which has an automatic locking mechanism. And if she had managed to bypass that, she would have had to then push open a fire escape door, which was locked from the outside. Even if she had somehow gotten through the door, she would have had to climb 4 flights of stairs to reach the roof. The whole thing just doesn't add up. So what really happened to Elisa? We may never know for sure. The police concluded that she must have snuck onto the roof somehow, slipped and fallen into the tank. But like I said, there is absolutely zero evidence that she left her room or the 5th floor. The fact that the door was locked from the inside doesn't help matters either. In hindsight, it's easy to see warning signs of Elisa's deteriorating mental state. The fact that she had recently been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, the fact that she had stopped taking her medication, the fact that she had been alone for a long time. But even so, everything we have seen so far does not paint the picture of a person who would voluntarily walk into a water tank on the roof of a building. Some people even think that there is foul play. After all, the hotel was known to be a hub for shady characters. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, had once stayed there, and there had been dozens of murders, suicides, and other suspicious deaths within the building. So perhaps Elisa was a victim of homicide rather than suicide, but there is absolutely no evidence to support this claim. Regardless of what really happened to her, one thing is certain: the mystery surrounding her disappearance and death captured the attention of the internet like few other cases ever have. From message boards to Reddit threads, people pored over every detail of the case, coming up with all sorts of theories and ideas. The most popular one is that Elisa was the victim of a secret government experiment, but there is no evidence that this is true. Then in 2019, Netflix came out with a 3-episode documentary series titled Crime Scene: The Texas Killing Fields, which was all about the Cecil Hotel and the string of killings that had taken place there. The show presented all of the theories, but it didn't really offer any new details. And that is where the case of Elisa Lam stands today, unsolved and full of questions. How did she die? Why did she die? And what happened on that fateful 5th floor? Maybe we'll never know. Maybe it will forever remain one of the great mysteries of our time. So what do you think? What happened to Elisa? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos about true crime and real mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you next time.